So, corrupt pro-Israeli members of the U.S. Senate last night approved the Israeli and American terrorist decision to illegally invade Iran. This despite the fact that there is absolutely no legal or moral basis for such an action. We all saw in Gaza just how barbaric and savage the Israelis can be, but now even the Americans under the Donald Trump regime are determined to showcase their depravity. Last night they bombed an Iranian naval ship which was returning home after taking part in a naval exercise with India. The ship or its 100-plus sailors weren't taking part in the ongoing conflict. The Americans learned about their presence and used their submarine in the region to sink this ship. Most of the sailors were given a silent death off the coast of Sri Lanka, and then this thug, Pete Hext, shared the footage of his country's barbarity to flaunt the cowardice of his regime by calling it a brave act. In fact, yesterday in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death, the first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Since India under Modi has become another Israeli and American poodle, it's no surprise that it did not even register any protest for such a despicable act in the waters of its influence. It happened in the Indian Ocean. As I speak, Israeli and American terrorists have been dropping powerful bombs on the residential complexes in Thrawn indiscriminately. You can see the visuals of their barbarity on our Telegram channel details on the screen. At least the world is now learning about the genocidal intent of this racist and genocidal man called Donald Trump. This demonic creature is completely exposed. Now, it's clear that there was never a justifiable reason to attack Iran. I've said it in many of my previous videos that Iran never posed any threats to anyone in the world or region. If any entity that posed serious threats to global peace, it was the illegal settler colony of Israel. This rogue Zionist entity likes to keep America engaged in an endless war. War criminal Netanyahu knows how to keep his American slaves in the White House gainfully employed, but the reality is that despite the win in the Senate vote, Trump and his terrorist Israeli boss Netanyahu are not able to change the global narrative or discussions on this topic. No one, not even pro-Israeli propagandists in the West, is able to make sense of the objective behind the illegal invasion of Iran. What was the trigger point? What necessitated this insane genocidal action? First, Trump said it was Iran's nuclear program despite having claimed to obliterate it totally and completely in June last year. Then this deranged occupant of the White House said the objective was regime change. A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. However, only a couple of days later, his minion and Israel foster Marco Rubio said that his country was dragged into this war to help Israel. United States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question I've been asked is why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact it bared to be true because in fact within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north for that matter had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't. Another minion of Trump, Pete Hex, told us yesterday that the US was executing the Israeli mission. To our steadfast partner Israel, your mission is being executed with unmatched skill and iron determination. The failure to dislodge the Iranian government or cause unrest in the country means that they don't have any objective now. But since they have started the war, so they can't back out from their crazy mission. And this man wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. He desperately wanted it. If you listen to the spokesperson of terroristness and Yahoo, you would be blown away by her rationale to justify this illegal war. She says Israel had to attack Iran because Iran produced 100 missiles a month, and the settler colony was able to procure only 7 interceptor a month. Then this would have created a massive imbalance according to her, and therefore Iran had to be bombed. The Iranians were rebuilding their missile arsenal, and they were continuing to view it as a shield for their nuclear weapons program, because what they were seeking to do, and they're moving towards doing, and in fact beginning to do, is have an industrial line that was going to produce 100 missiles a month, and we're only capable of producing 7 interceptor missiles a month. I mean, we are dealing with mentally sick people here. They have absolutely no justification, absolutely no right to live in a civilized world. But these are the people who are controlling the region and the wider West through their paid MPs, congressmen, congresswomen, senators, lords, and dames in the West. I do not believe in conspiracy theories, but knowing what we know now about the sheer depravity of the thought processes of these human devils, nothing sounds off limits for these savages. Here's one thing no one is talking about. Not sure why, but the 28th of February, the day Israel and the US attacked Iran, is September 11th. How's that? Let me explain. February 28th was the 11th day of Ramadan, and Ramadan is the 9th month of the Or in the Islamic calendar, so it was the 11th day of the 9th month. So it's another 9/11 ritual. You want more, right? Who was the first victim that we knew about during the attack? Exactly. An elementary school. 100 girls died. Why? Because it's a pure blood. This is how they feed their master, right? Does it remind you of something? Yep, exactly. Epstein and his gang. Same people, same behavior, same prints, same attitude, just the same gang. So wake up and open your eyes so that you know who's in control. Open your book, whatever your book is, and you'll find it there. So wake up. Even the Arab rulers are now realizing that Israeli and American terrorists only cared about themselves and no one else. This is becoming increasingly evident in the public discourse, even in the US, like this one on Tucker Carlson's show. The Arabs are going to say, you're not building back in our countries anymore. So why would they? We didn't defend them. I mean, this is a reciprocal relationship. They're not doing this because they love us. They give us deals on billions, hundreds of billions in foreign investment in the United States, all this. But in exchange, we promised to protect them and we didn't. That's right. And in fact, there's reports, and I think they're credible. In fact, a Saudi official was complaining about this 2 days ago. Basically, whatever air defense systems were in these Arab countries were sent over to Israel. Yeah. And they actually left our own bases and people vulnerable. Our own government did, to protect Israeli targets rather than to protect our men and women in uniform. Do you believe that's true? Do you believe the US government prioritized Israel over our own troops? If you had asked me this a year or two ago, I would have said no way. But after seeing that Huckabee interview, by the way, bravo. After seeing that Huckabee interview, I can't imagine how we didn't do that. When even CNN is forced to broadcast this, it shows just how disgusted even the pro-Zionist American media outlets are by Trump's decision to join Israeli barbarians to attack Iran. Are you surprised at the extent of Iran's retaliation? Well, I am surprised at the president's surprise. Respectfully, I would recall that the Crown Prince and other Gulf readers have been urging America not to undertake military action against Iran because all of us believe that action will not remain confined to Iran, that Iran will retaliate against American presence in the area, which is present in all of the Gulf states and as far away as Turkey. Apparently, the CNN didn't stop here. It interviewed the former UK spy chief and diplomat John Simmers. He has some serious warnings for Trump and his terrorist friend Netanyahu. I think this conflict has already expanded beyond what most people expected. I think the scale of the Iranian response has has been greater than many anticipated. Perhaps wrongly, they should have anticipated. Yeah, I was going to ask you because they said it loud and clear. Well, certainly they said it loud and clear, and they warned the countries up and down the Gulf that if you get involved in this, we're going to hit you. And you can see the rationale from the Iranian point of view. They want to build up as much pressure as they can through America's friends in the Gulf, through energy markets and so on, in order to get Trump to call an end to this assault on their country and on their regime. Now, I don't have any sympathy with the Iranian regime whatsoever. I think is a vile and vicious regime, but I just think that the experience of the last 25 years, whether it's on our side in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, or whether it's on other countries' side like Russia's experience in Ukraine, is once you start a conflict like this, you may think it's only going to last 4 or 5 days or 4 or 5 weeks. But it has a habit of the reverberations spreading much more widely, and there's a real risk in this case of that happening. I think in some ways, United States, in the confusion between various members of the administration, has rode back on its objectives. Or they've coalesced around a different objective. This is not the objective that we were told. The loose talk about regime change has gone, and they're now talking about. You say loose talk, it was an actual war aim. President Trump said it many times. Netanyahu said it many times. They said it. That was a war aim. I say loose talk because it was loosely said with no willingness to follow it up. The only way you could achieve regime change in Iran is by putting ground troops in. And I sincerely hope the United States doesn't follow its initial mistake of launching this war with a second mistake of putting ground. So you think it's a mistake? If you think it's a mistake, which many do, many agree with you, certainly a war of choice, certainly one that means, Trump said, oh, they were going to hit us first. No evidence of that. Oh, they have reconstituted their nuclear program. No evidence of that. Oh, they have intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach us. They don't. So lots of flimsiness despite the horrendousness of the regime against its own people. So how do you think? And Israel has just said whoever Iran chooses as a successor to Harmony will pretty much assassinate them, or we will. How does this end? So Mr. Hext has set out in his own sort of emotional way a commitment about missiles and nuclear, and now that gives the military targets they can hit and targets they can demonstrate have been destroyed. I think that will end up being the goal of the US administration. And as the pressure on the economy, on global markets ramps up, pressure on energy supplies, I think the president will feel that there's a time to declare, a time to finish this conflict. We'll wake up one morning like we did last Saturday when we discover suddenly this has started. We'll wake up one morning and find it suddenly being finished. Why is it difficult for anyone to understand that you can never bomb Iran into submission? You couldn't eradicate Hamas despite more than 2 years of indiscriminate bombings and flattening of entire Gaza and slaughtering more than 600,000 innocent men, women, children, and babies. What makes you think you can defeat Iran in a few days or even weeks or even months? And Iran is not even an open-air prison spread across a few hundred square kilometers of area, just like Gaza. Iran is a country that is 3 times the size of France, 4.6 times of Germany, and nearly 7 times the United Kingdom. And these American and Israeli terrorists dream of defeating Iran in days, weeks, and months. They would be able to kill a lot of innocent people, no doubt about that. Or even destroy infrastructure because any coward can drop bombs from a distance when there is hardly any resistance to their air superiority. They have just bombed a 12,000-seat stadium in Thrawn. That is their bravery. The visual of that bombing and the destruction is for you to see now on your screen. How is this a legitimate target in any conflict unless your aim is to just display your terrorism? So Iran never exported terrorism. But the brutal terrorism unleashed by the Americans and Israelis are on full display, and the whole world is witnessing this in real time. If the Americans and Israelis were really brave, these terrorists would have entered Iran. In fact, should have entered Iran and physically removed the current leadership or the corrupt and genocidal regime. But they know they are cowards. They fear deaths. They know the risks attached to that particular decision. They couldn't defeat the Taliban or the Iraqis despite years of occupation of their countries and murdering millions of people there. You think they stand a chance against Iranians who are already giving them grief? As I speak, the Iranians have sunk another U.S. oil tanker in the Persian Gulf. This morning, they hit the Ben Gurion airport with their drones. The damage caused by Iranian missiles inside the settler colony, I'm talking about Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa, is reaching another level. The Israeli government has imposed a brutal crackdown on anyone sharing the visuals of this damage on social media. That's the reason you're not able to see that. Even channels like CNN are not allowed to report this. Want to go up there? We're not showing you that because we're not going to show you. The Israeli government does not allow us or want us to show where that may have come up, that interceptor. But I can't see this madness ending anytime soon. This is also a lesson for those trigger-happy Iranians living in the West, or shall I call them the Western counts useful idiots. The indiscriminate bombing by Israeli and American terrorists are not going to spare your loved ones just because you agreed to perform half-naked dance in your living rooms to please your Western masters. Don't expect any sympathy when you learn that you have lost contacts with your loved ones in Iran for good. You would have sponsored their murders. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.